Hi, friends. Logan Clemens here with the Better Events Podcast. And in this week's episode, we are talking all about traveling for events, covering some of our policies, what clients pay for, what they don't, and some best practices. So stick around.
Welcome to the Better Events Podcast. Join two event strategists, Logan Clements and Mary Davidson, who believe we can all create, host, and attend better events. In this podcast, you will learn about event strategy and actions that you can use today as an event host, planner, or manager. Hear directly from the people who are creating innovative and inspiring events today and tomorrow, and grow your business along the way. Now, let's get started, and thanks for listening to the Better Events Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another week of the Better Events Podcast. In today's episode, we are talking all about traveling for events. We're going to talk about policies, best practices, and just some tips and tricks that we have for you regarding traveling and events. And we're excited for this conversation. Logan and I like to travel, so we will get into it. But before we do, of course, we have our conversation starter for today. So, Logan, it's springtime. We're not quite into summer yet, but I don't know about you. I'm thinking more about nature and the outdoors. So this question for you is, if you planted a garden, what would be the thing that you'd be most excited to plant?
This is a very hard question because Mary knows my partner is a big gardener, if anything, a landscape architect. So Archie has a large garden that he's been planting. So of the two of us, I don't have the green thumb. So the thing I would be most excited to plant, I feel like I do really like, I don't know if they're called like annuals, but the flowers that only come like at a certain time of year. So certain like sunflowers, and he's planting a whole thing. He's calling it the cut flower garden. So people could cut flowers and take them and make bouquets at home. And I do just love color. I just love color. I think it is really pretty. And so any kind of pop of color, which I don't have anything that I have personally planted recently, but yeah, we're going to aspire, right, Mary? This is an imaginary
Yeah,
garden.
imaginary garden. Yes.
How about you?
I
How
love
would you
that.
answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, I try to plant a little something every year, but I agree with what you said. I like the ones that come back every year. It's like a surprise. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I planted that last year. But I think I'm gonna choose like a herb garden or something like that. I've never planted any type of food. And so I think just something, I don't know if I could pick one, but something herby related to that. Because when I buy those, I end up throwing them away. I don't eat them in time. So I think it would be wonderful to have a source right at my house. So maybe one day. I have been too afraid to try to make it happen, and I don't like bugs. And so I know it's like, if you put this next to this, you won't have as many bugs or what. I haven't figured any of that out. So if you have a green thumb, not event related at all, send us your tips on what we should plant. Maybe we will.
That's amazing, Mary. And I will say, sidebar, I have enjoyed helping my partner weed the gardens as we get ready for the busy summer season. He hosts some weddings. It's like a bookable venue. And I will say this podcast, or any podcast, is a great partner for weeding and pulling things out of the ground and listening to a podcast. So if you're listening to us right now while you're weeding, please send us a note, because I would have loved to know if you're actually doing it. But a little bit about why we chose this topic, talking about traveling for events. I will honestly say we get asked this all the time from folks who are new to the industry. I also know that my grandmother, hi Nanny, likes to ask me this still, even though I've been doing events for so long. She is pleasantly thrilled to learn that I'm not the one personally paying for all my flights every time or my hotel room. So we figured it'd be worth dedicating a whole episode to talking about traveling for work, especially through the lens of the event industry as event planners. So, Mary, we love to start broad. So what kind of travel do you do for events?
Yeah, well, I like what you were saying, because I have like friends that don't know like a ton about what I do for work, and they see me traveling online or like social media or something like that, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, how cool! Like, what a cool job that you have. You're always going places." And I maybe we'll both share our opinions more about that. But I am like, when I am working an event and traveling, that means that it's a large event because they have the budget to pay for me to come. And that's what my experience is traveling for events. And so that means the kind of events that I'm traveling for are usually corporate, or they function more like a conference whether they're hosted by a nonprofit or whatever, but it's like that kind of conference type of model, or like incentive work. We have done some of those. We partner with some companies that do incentives. And so we've also been brought over there for those types of events. So that's me. I am trying to remember. I haven't been like flown somewhere to support a nonprofit event. I have gone to a different state, but I've driven because it's been nearby. So yeah, except for Logan. When I worked with her, Logan's like, "What? How could you?"
Like, excuse me, am I chopped liver, Mary? I
You're
was
not.
like,
You're not. I'm
we've been
sorry, I forgot about that one. You're right. That's an exception.
that is an accept. Yeah, I was gonna say we've been like 3 years of traveling to
We have,
support.
and
So
it's been great.
yeah,
You're
to
right.
support the event. That's so funny, Mary. Yeah, I think for me, it's honestly right now 90% of the event execution I do is on the road. So is traveling. And it is, like you said, majority people who have a larger budget or they're looking for someone who's really specialized in what they do. So a lot of my sporting events, while there are ample opportunities here in Seattle, there's only so many, and often you need to be available a whole season. So I have been finding a lot of work doing these contract gigs where they need someone to really be all hands on deck for a month or 2 months or 3 weeks or whatever it is. Like for my tennis and my pro softball and the stuff I did at the Olympics. And then I do shorter corporate shows that might be like a week in another city. And again, a lot of it relies on those relationships. But to your point, Mary, yes, when I'm traveling for work, it's not as exotic and fancy as it sounds. But I'm sure I know we're going to get more into it as we answer more of these questions.
Yeah, most definitely. So, kind of continuing to talk a little bit more about how we get the opportunity for events, because I think other event professionals listening to this who may not travel for events might wonder this thing. So, we'll start here as well. Logan, how do you get the opportunity to travel for events? Like, do you think a requirement for event professionals or freelancers to be willing to travel for events, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a requirement, but it's definitely a plus. I very much market myself as someone who's has an active passport and very willing to travel anywhere and everywhere you would like to take me. And I do know there's some other, and that's also because of the season of life I'm in. I know some other planners that are like, I need to be home every night, so I'm only interested in local opportunities. But if you're somebody who's like, you're getting all the local opportunities and you're struggling to find the traveling ones, I would encourage you to start networking with event companies outside of your area. So a lot of the ones that travel, like I think I've laughed to you, Mary. Like I have an agency out of New York that I met during COVID, and or no, I met the one out of LA. So the New York one I actually just got introduced to by another producer. I reached out saying I want to, work with some more agencies. They introduced me. That agency in New York flew me to an event in Denver, and then a year later they didn't even fly me. They hired me for an event in Seattle, which was really ironic because I felt like I had to virtually go by way of New York to get a gig here in Seattle. But you never know where it's going to come from. But I would encourage you, if you feel like you've exhausted telling the people in your current network locally that you want to travel, working with usually in big hubs. So I feel like New York, LA, San Francisco, Chicago, like those have companies that are based there, but they execute events elsewhere. And they're looking then to travel people in. But I think you just need to be very vocal that you're willing to travel and not only interested in local events to start booking those. Mary, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. I think, yeah, if in short, if you want it, there's opportunities, and if you don't, you can have a lot of success locally. It just really depends what you're niched in, and then what you're willing to do as well. I think Logan, you were kind of touching on this, but yeah, the more willing you are to just kind of be an event professional and support general event needs, the more likely you will travel because there's more opportunities kind of spread out in that way. So if that's what you're looking for, then maybe open up, your services a little bit more and what you might be offering. But yeah, I agree with everything you said.
Yeah. So, Mary, how do you structure travel related fees in your contract or proposals? Like, do you normally do reimbursements? Do you do a per diem or a flat rate?
Yeah, I think we're all going to learn a little bit more from Logan on this one. I've been trying to figure it out, and what I noticed is that I don't do something consistently, and I would like to change that. And so, what we have done before is usually reimbursements, and I think sometimes that's easier in a way because we can just like buy the thing. But what I've tried to put in a contract at least is what they are going to reimburse. Like they will reimburse the flights, they'll reimburse Ground transportation to and from the airport to the hotel is kind of what I say specifically. A per diem, and am I forgetting something key? Oh, like a hotel accommodation as well. So, but I would love sometimes if they book it, we'll talk more about that. But if not, then we will end up just doing the reimbursement route so we can choose, which is nice. The one other thing I will say is per diem. This one I think is the most complicated thing for us to navigate, and that's been for a number of different reasons. We do a government contract that we're a part of. We're like a subcontractor, and so through that, the per diem rates are so specific. Like you have to follow those government per diem rates that they have on like their website and all the things. So that makes it complicated. But besides that, what I've noticed is I've gotten pushback a lot on the per diem rates. And so that rate is never really the same. And that is something that's sort of frustrating to me and when I'm trying to put together these contracts. And so I think I have more to say about per diem, but I will summarize it and leave it with that. Logan, what about you? How do you structure your travel related fees and contracts?
I mean, unfortunately, Mary, it's similar to you in terms it's all over the place because, yes, everybody is different. Some people have their own terms that I will follow. Others, like I'm setting the terms. I'm sure there's a listener that's like, Logan, you should set the terms everywhere. Sure. Try doing that. See, like to Mary's point and my point, like every client's different. So I often will do like for my sporting events, they will often just reimburse me for flights. So whether I send them flights and they book them for me or I'm booking them and then billing them later for those flights. And then they'll often do per diem to cover any meals that they're not feeding me on site. And and so that's kind of how I structure it. How I do it for some of my projects. Some I actually have started doing some flat fees. So Mary, kind of what you're talking about internally, I'm trying to factor in airport pickups, per diem, all of that. And I'm just putting that in my project fee, like lump sum. And then I always call out the two I will always call out are accommodations and hotel. And I explained it to a new potential client about a month ago. I said, those are billed based on actuals in the sense that if you tell me to book a flight now for next March, it might be cheaper than if you're telling me in January you want me in March. Same thing for hotels. We know there's like surge pricing depending. So that has been really hard for me to estimate to an accurate ability in a way that like I feel better about food and like Ubers and taxis and stuff. So those are the ones I'll always do. And then the hard part I have though, and this is a little bit of, I feel like a controversial point. My accountant really wants me to make sure that I'm marking up any costs that I paid with my money today and you're paying me back next week, next month, 2 months from now, however long it takes, having that markup on things. And I have some clients who though want receipts to show, hey, no, I can't pay the markup. I got to pay exactly what you've paid. So it doesn't factor in that markup. And I don't mind it for the people who pay me really quickly. It's just the people who pay me pretty slow, like 2 months after I've had to book something, where I feel like I've gotten burned on that if they want the receipt versus, some clients don't need the receipts. So long story short, there's no right way to do it. I think the hard part is you need to track and just make sure you're not losing money. And that was where I started having to work that per diem. And to your point, the extra little Ubers, like I don't want to nickel and dime my clients being like, here's a $10 receipt for this one thing. Like I was like, I would rather just have that built into my project fee. And I know I have $200 of fund money to cover business related things on this project. And I'm not necessarily cutting into what I thought I was going to make.
Yeah, totally. I think the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, this is kind of confusing. Like there aren't some hard and fast rules. There might be depending on like the industry within the event industry, but still. So I think we'll continue to hopefully provide some clarity, but this is truly what has worked for us. So hopefully this helps other people. Um, Logan, have you ever had a client push back on travel costs? And we kind of were getting into that a little bit, but how do you justify or explain those?
I don't think I've had anyone recently. It's usually the decision to either bring me like I guess the pushback I've gotten has either been the why fly you in versus hire someone local. That conversation has been had. And that's often just because, yeah, you have certain travel costs, like flight, the hotel, things that they know I personally am not necessarily making, but it's going to cost them to bring me in. Um, and so that's where I try to be as transparent as I can of saying explicitly what's included or what's not included. And even some nonprofit clients I've worked with, I've been like, I can give you an estimate. Like right now, a hotel plus flights, like that project I brought you in on, Mary, I try to estimate to them, be like, hey, for 3 people to fly in and stay for a couple nights, it's going to cost $1,500 extra dollars. so that when I added that onto the final invoice, it wasn't going to like sticker shock them. But they never had any issues, because one of the cool parts of traveling is you have a client who moves their event around year to year. They might have certain pieces that then like the hotel changes every year. Maybe their local AV team charges every year, but there is a value in providing that comfort of being the same person they've worked with no matter where they are. And I've found clients will pay for that extra level of comfort and understanding that you have the context of like, oh, you were with us last year, I don't have to start over. And that has helped them with some of those costs. I will also say sometimes clients get a room block in a hotel. And so and part of their negotiation with the hotel is to get certain rooms comped. So sometimes the hotel doesn't even cost them any extra for them to give you a room. So that's not always it. It's just sometimes flights. So yeah, Mary, I'm trying to think. I know I've definitely had pushback. I just can't think of one right now. How about you?
I think what you called out about the hotel room block is super important. So I'm definitely glad you said that. The only thing is I already started grabbing about per diem. And just in case this is like helpful for other people, I'll say from the perspective of you get hired to work an event and someone is paying, like you get hired by another like event professional planner agency and they are paying you back for your expenses. In this situation, what I've noticed is it is inconsistent. So like Logan, when I've worked an event with you, we get paid back like the flat rate. So like whether you correct me if I'm wrong, right, Logan, this is what you do. Like whether we spend it all or not, like this is the rate that we're getting for meals that day. And
Yeah.
that can be nice. Actually, obviously we love that, right? It gives us like a lot of freedom and like what we're gonna eat and all that stuff. Um, but then I work for, other people as a contractor and I'm putting every single, receipt in an expense report and all of the things. And I am only getting reimbursed for what I spent. Whether they are charging the client a flat rate for me and making money off me or not, I actually don't know. But if you get hired, I don't think you can assume that you are going to get one or the other. Like make sure that is clear in your contract, because that's been confusing to me as somebody who's gotten hired to support another event professional. And then the one time I did have pushback from one of our clients is they sent me their employee handbook and this is for a really large corporation. And they said, we reimburse employees a per diem rate of, I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was $50 a day or something like that. And I was like, that's awesome, but we're not an employee of your company and this is our per diem rate. And they agreed to it. And so you just never know. And so that was an example that I wanted to share.
No, and that's good. And I mean, that's Mary, thank you. I've definitely done the flat rate now just to try to account nowadays for certain things that I'm like, oh, it's more expensive, buying a coffee at a hotel cafe than it is probably going to your local coffee shop, and certain things that like add up. But yeah, there's definitely not like I don't know if there's a right or wrong, because I also have had where the client reimburses me exactly what I spent. And there is also a comfort in that, knowing like, oh my gosh, in Las Vegas, getting my Starbucks and a breakfast sandwich is actually $20 instead of the normal like 12, just because in Vegas there's a markup. So knowing I'd get reimbursed for that, how much more it actually was because it was actuals, is nice, versus sometimes per diem, you're like, I blew it all on dinner. Now I'm spending my own money on meals. So I'm like, there's pros and cons to both. Whenever you can, yes, bank some of your per diem as like some extra payment for you because you're not a breakfast gal or you ate a lighter lunch or whatever. That's always nice. But just make sure you're covered, or if you're not covered, that is something you're factoring into your rate. Because I feel like that was early days on. I did a lot of what Mary said not to do, and I made assumptions. And then later on was like, oh, I thought, that didn't come out as well as I thought I was because I had so many expenses. So talk on and on about per diem.
Logan, what would you say are some of your non-negotiables when it comes to like your accommodations? So when you like, let's say that someone else is booking your accommodations. So like, what are you determined to fly a certain airline? Is there a certain seat that you request? Like, what does that process look like? Like, how diva can we be in the process of someone else booking our accommodations? What are your preferences? Talk us through that.
Well, my advice to listeners would be, don't be a diva. Advocate for yourself and have boundaries. But if you're not a diva, it will help you book things. I know of some divas in the industry, and some of them have worked their way up to a certain status that they are welcome to be divas. But I have always built myself as an easy traveler. From living in China, I joke I know how to work in multicultural, multilingual environments. China is just culture is so different than America that I was like, you can throw me anywhere and I will figure it out. I'll figure out how to get my coffee. I'll figure out how to make myself comfortable. And I know some other event pros that all of that would feel really hard and they would be texting their lead person asking for help with all these things and questions. And I had somebody else tell me that I was very easy to travel with. And that was an incentive for them to then send me somewhere else because they knew I wasn't going to bug them with too many just like little questions. I was a problem solver. So I am very easy, Mary. Apart from now, I do identify as a Delta diva. I do love Delta Airlines. I have doubled down on getting all the points and everything. So I do try to fly Delta when I can, though I have a project this summer where the Delta flights were either super expensive because I am cognizant about budget, or like really long. Like I would have had to have a layover for 6 hours somewhere. So I do dabble in other airlines, but I've gotten to the status now that like I get free upgrades. So that's always just, it's extra comfort. I know I can sleep better. And then I've been able to factor in for this project I'm doing this summer with softball. I'm on the road for a long time. So I'm going to have 2 checked bags. So when I fly Delta, those are free. When I fly other airlines, they are not. And that's something I also factor in with my costs and my argument if I get pushback of like, no, you should put me on Delta because it's more expensive, but like you're not factoring in what I'll have to pay when I get to the airport. So Delta is the only one I guess I have, Mary. I do like being very flexible, and I know you're flexible with me on the project you work with me. That's like a fun one where I rent a VRBO, like a rental house for like a 4-day gig, just because we also spend so much time in hotels. It's kind of nice to shake it up, especially when you know all the people on the project. But how would you answer? Do you have any non-negotiables, Mary?
Similar things that you were saying. I really love flying Alaska Airlines, and we're out of Seattle, so it's a hub, and so I just have like status through them. And so what I've done for events before is when they are trying to put us on a different flight that we're not booking, I am like, well, I like, you don't, if they're willing to pay for my bags, I'm like, well, you don't have to pay for my bags. This will save this much money, overall, because with Alaska, I have status. So if that's the difference between the flight fare, then I'd prefer to fly Alaska. It hasn't worked. I've tried it a couple times. But I would say most of the time people will ask for your like preferred flight information or airline. So I'll just give them that. I'll give them, my frequent flyer number or my loyalty number, and then like my like TSA number, and they just do it, and it usually works out really well. I think generally the people who are doing these are you know, they're smart people. And so when I get my seat booked, I'm usually not booked in the middle seat unless it's the only option. I think they tried to, be fair. That's been my experience. At least I haven't really had any terrible experiences that were out of our control, And so, yeah, that's what I would say there. One of my non-negotiables is I will not fly a red-eye flight for an event. Maybe, obviously, if it was like out of the country, a lot of those end up being red eyes, but I'm not going to go to work the next day in that situation. Like if I have to pay out of my own pocket to arrive at a different time or earlier so that I'm avoiding a red eye, I will do that, or I won't take the event. Like it's not worth it to me to like hammer myself into the ground by the time I'm there. So I do feel strongly about that. So that's probably my one big thing. And the other thing, I don't know if this really fits in this category. I think I've said this as a hot take here on the podcast before, but I do think for our travel days, Logan, I know you have opinions about this, that we should be paid a full rate. And so I do feel pretty passionately about that. It's not a deal breaker for me, but I would try to advocate for it. Like I would rather, just have a flat rate for an event, and like not really know how you're doing the math if you're half rating like one of my travel days or not. Like that like rosy picture in my mind will work, but if I know that I'm getting a half rate on a travel day, that's frustrating to me. So that's my opinion. Logan.
Mary, this is monumental on the podcast. We rarely disagree. Rarely. Yes, because listeners, I do feel, I would love to get paid a full day. That's great. But I will honestly say I'm definitely in the camp of half day rates. With the caveat, if you are expected to travel and then work that same day, I have seen that abused, and I would be on your side, Mary, where like that, then you should technically really be in overtime. And I know some like production operators of AV stuff will actually be like, the minute I leave my house, the clock starts. And then, yes, you would go into overtime. But I think I just haven't worked a project yet where someone has done that for me. Minus one, I think one. And they corrected me because I was like, oh, I thought it was half days. And they said, no, it's full. So I was like pleasantly surprised. But my argument, listeners, for why it should be a half day rate when you travel is because yes, you have to travel that day. It does in the industry. I feel like it's just done to be an easier way to factor in a travel day, whether it's an hour flight or a 6-hour flight. So yes, when it's a longer flight, you're kind of getting burned. But you also have the ability while traveling to either be digitally working on another event. You could be sleeping, you could be watching Netflix, reading, doing whatever you want. And often when that travel date, you don't have to be in by a certain time. You are someone that hypothetically could work, that day and fly in at the nighttime, and you're getting paid the same as somebody who left in the morning and got there, by midday and gets time to hang by the pool at the hotel or whatever it is. So um, I see both sides.
Cost of doing business. I
It
mean,
is. Again, I know of an event MC in the
yeah,
industry that charges full day rates for travel, and they are that specialized and that good that people just
yeah.
suck it up, and they pay them the same rate every day. And I sit there and I go, I think I would miss out on work if I put my foot down in that
Mhm.
regard.
Yeah,
But
that's fair. Yeah.
I like to offer contractors. I definitely tell you, Mary, that I'm doing half days now that I think about it when I've given you like your a
Yeah, make
contractor agreement,
exceptions.
but
I'll make exceptions.
it's the project rate. So I do
Yeah,
give you the big full, like, here's what it is. And then I'm
right.
like, here's what I did in the behind the scenes. And, I'm transparent enough that like I bill the client a half day for all of our travel days. I'm not necessarily making half day rate on it in a way that maybe depending who you work for, a larger group, like maybe there isn't that transparency. So I get it. Um, but yes, you should be charging for your travel, I guess, is the key takeaway. If you have to travel and spend the night away from your home, you should be charging for it. This has been a meaty enough episode, Mary. We're not going to fit it all into 1 week. So we are going to continue this discussion about travel and our tips. So tune in next week where we're going to talk more about some of our go-to packing hacks, how we manage our energy, and some travel apps that we love as event pros. So Mary, to wrap up this week, you have our bonus tip.
I do. Okay, our bonus tip today is that if you are doing an event and you're providing services, if the client comes back to you and they need an additional service added on, don't be afraid to do a change order. Now, like legally, look into what you need to do for your contracts to make it fair. But normally, what I do is a change order. So I'm just adding on the service. And so our bonus tip today is to not be afraid to offer something as an additional service that you are being paid for that originally maybe was not in your contract. This has been a lesson learned for me this year. A couple times this has worked out. And so just be willing to offer that if that's something that might be interesting to you to make a little bit more money on a contract that you already have. So that's our bonus tip for today.
Mary, that was an amazing bonus tip. We love advocating for ourselves and adding on services. So that brings us to the end of this week's episode. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Better Events Pod. You can email us at bettereventspod@gmail.com. You can connect with us on LinkedIn directly as well. Just let us know you heard about us from the podcast in the little note when you connect. And if you want to get more Better Events content, join our private community on Substack, and you'll get exclusive access to our private Slack channel. And if you already made the leap, we love seeing you and can't wait to see you back in the community. As always, we thank you for listening, and we'll be back in your feeds again next Wednesday.